Welcome, everyone. I'm super excited to be speaking with Sergey today. Sergey and I go way back for many years. We were both starting our respective projects and have been collaborating for throughout this whole time, building different pieces of the tech stack and watching so many amazing teams build upon our tech together. So really excited. It's a huge privilege for us to have Sergey with us chatting. And I'm really excited to get to dig into oracles, how oracles connect to storage networks, how Chainlink connects to Filecoin, and all of the amazing things that people are building with our networks today. So yeah, let's dive in. And thank you so much, Sergey, for being here with us. So I figured we could start with just some good introduction for people unfamiliar with Oracle networks. Can you tell us what decentralized Oracle networks are?
Sure, of course, Juan, and thank you for including me, and always my pleasure to chat with you and the great community of people that you've built here. So decentralized Oracle networks create consensus about a different set of topics from blockchains or decentralized storage solutions. So blockchains create consensus about packaging transactions into blocks, whereas decentralized Oracle networks create consensus about, external data, random number generation, certain amounts of off-chain trust minimized compute through something called keepers. So basically all the computation and validation of data that blockchains don't do, you can imagine that an Oracle network does in some way. And what that does is it provides a critical set of services that then get consumed in the smart contract code to expand the universe of what's possible. The first use case of Oracle networks, which we essentially pioneered, which is kind of why we have this position in terms of adoption, is around data. But I think it's important to note that it's not just about data. It's actually about off-chain trust minimized consensus about many different topics that a blockchain doesn't generate. And it's kind of just applying decentralized consensus to a different set of computations and data validation problems, basically.
Yeah, and so you mentioned a few services there that Oracle networks provide for smart contract networks. Are there other services that can you make it sort of concrete? What are the kinds of services that smart contracts might pull into? So things like data feeds and so on. But are there other kinds of things that make interesting networks? Like I've seen randomness and things like that.
Yeah, so there's kind of a progression now in terms of what's the most in demand and is kind of usually a gating issue type of service to make an application. Usually an application that's popular. So it actually started out with market data, and that began to power a lot of DeFi and still powers a lot of DeFi and helps DeFi grow, because having data from Oracle networks is kind of a precondition for DeFi markets and applications to even kind of really come into existence in a secure way. Then it's gone on to the long tail of data. So the long tail of data is just many different other topics: weather data, sports, elections, any number of other data sets. For example, today we had some great news that the Associated Press is launching an official Chainlink to provide their data about economics and their data about various other kind of real world events that previously have not been in a blockchain at that quality and in an assigned form. And then it also expanded to various smaller computations. So random number generation is a great example. Our random number generator is the verifiable randomness function that we have is actually verifiable on chain. So it provides a lot of reliability to games and NFT generation events and so on. And then from there, computation has really grown to include something called keepers, which is doing more general purpose computation, starting with DevOps tasks. And now we're actually applying Oracle networks to cross-chain communication and token movement, both. And so all of these kind of problems, they really just require a form of decentralized consensus about the validation of data, the generation of randomness, the execution of a DevOps task, the transition of messages and information or tokens between chains. And so that's been the progression. It's been data, It's been validated data, computation, and now moving on to cross-chain messaging and token movement.
That's awesome, and congratulations! Really exciting on being able to pull in all of this real world rich data, from different economic facts and election results and so on. Like that's super cool. Digging into the data feeds, are there kind of one of the things that Filecoin is really good for is just massive scale data storage. So are there any kind of like interesting data feeds that are like really big, or any kind of like large data sources that you're excited to be able to tap into?
Yeah, so I know that the Filecoin network continues to grow and holds many valuable data sets, and there's a lot of work there around how do you get the data out of the Filecoin decentralized storage system into powering various smart contracts. There's weather data, IoT data. There's a number of different exciting data topics that I think are useful and going to be and are being used for various more advanced smart contract use cases. I think there's also something to be said about the ability for Oracle networks to use decentralized storage as a for persistence, basically as a persistent data store, because once again, the Oracle networks, their goal isn't to generate blocks of transactions. Their goal also isn't to generate a form of consensus for persistent long-term data storage. Their goal is to just kind of generate the consensus around the validation of data or a random number or a DevOps task or cross-chain movement or something. And the actual persistence doesn't really want to stay in the Oracle network. That's not going to be as efficient, and that's not really the point. And really, actually, I think it's important for different projects to carve out and really focus on, in a very clear way, on specific parts of the decentralized stack. So I see Oracle networks and various Chainlink networks getting substantial amounts of data from Filecoin. I see them writing substantial amounts of data into the decentralized storage network that is Filecoin, getting the benefit of decentralized, persistent storage. And beyond that, I think there's actually a lot of other interesting combinations where you can basically verify certain things on the Filecoin network and prove that they're there, maybe without having to move all the data elsewhere. And just a lot of other interesting combinations. One interesting one I saw recently was providing insurance for Filecoin miners to create certain guarantees that the Filecoin miners will actually be guaranteed to retain the data at a certain service level. So I think there's a lot of collaboration, because what I see from what I see from the projects that tend to do a really good job at building a focused part of the stack is that they focus on a part of the stack. And so, that's where I think both of our approaches are very similar, in that we've chosen the part of the stack, and, we've really focused in on doing that to the most secure and decentralized degree possible.
Yeah, it's fantastic what becomes possible when you start coupling the ability to pull in lots of data and facts about the world in larger scales, and you're able to connect that to the computation of smart contracts and so on through oracles. This is like really building up to something extremely powerful for the whole world. You described it as sort of like the truth machine. Can you tell us about this broader concept and how these cryptographically secured systems and cryptographically verified systems are going to fit into helping solve large scale problems in the world?
Sure. Of course. I don't know exactly when this is going to happen. I know that adoption of decentralized services, both in the storage format and in the Oracle network format, is happening now at greater and greater scale. I know that enterprises are using smart contracts more and more. So those two things I know are happening. The dynamic of the truth machine and the value of cryptographic truth, I think, really depends on the point at which society decides that it's important for a certain part of society to work a certain way. And what I mean by that is that the way that society works in many different specific verticals or industries or ways of doing things in like specific formats, whether it's ad networks or social media or trading or real estate, is the dynamic is pretty much, we told you one thing, we did another. We told you one thing and we did another again, right? So recent examples are Evergrande, right? Evergrande, the big real estate developer, told people one thing, did another, because nobody really knew what solvency was. In the Western kind of part of the world's internet, Robinhood said one thing, did another, right? A little bit less recently, Wirecard in Europe payments network basically committed fraud, said one thing but did another. And the reason that these firms can say one thing and do another is because they're not forced, they're not cryptographically forced to act in a certain way. And at a certain point in a certain industry or in a certain subset of human activity, there will be enough of these kind of we said one thing but we did another events. Like imagine if there were 5 Robinhoods back to back month after month, or imagine if there were like 20 Evergrandes back to back every week. People in that part of the world would decide, look, this kind of say one thing, do another model doesn't really work for us anymore. We actually need to know your solvency. We actually need a guarantee that you can't hold trading. We actually need to know that your payment network, has a solvent set of reserves. And that's when the truth machine, which I understand to be this collection of technologies, because they all kind of need to work together. The truth itself is generated through Oracle networks. It's then fed into on-chain state that defines outcomes. And then it's stored, the results or, the things that people want to be persistent are stored in decentralized storage networks, such as Filecoin, right? So the truth machine is what I think consumers and users will get from all of this work that all of us are doing. And eventually there will be a flip. And the flip will not be, hey, we want to make a crypto startup, or hey, we're an enterprise and we want to, compete with other enterprises. It'll be, I'm a consumer and I only want to do trading, or I only want to buy real estate, or I only want to use a payment system if it gives me a cryptographic guarantee.
Yep.
And that'll require private keys, the truth machine in the form of oracles, smart contracts, and decentralized storage. And when that flip in society happens, that's when it's going to be like email, right? If you don't have email, good luck conducting transactions. Yep. It's going to be the same dynamic, except for this cryptographic truth.
Yeah, looking forward to that future. And I think one of the things that is going to help us get there, that I think a lot of people are super excited about, is Chainlink 2.0, and that brings in sort of these hybrid smart contracts and so on. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How do those work?
Sure. So hybrid smart contracts are the name we have in the paper for the more advanced version of smart contracts, which is actually a collection of different systems and cryptographically guaranteed services that make the advanced version of a smart contract, right? So the definition of a smart contract over time has expanded, right? When you and me started, a smart contract was one piece of code that did one thing, probably generate a token. It didn't have a multi-sig. It didn't have a DAO voting contract. It didn't have a bunch of other contracts, right? Now the definition of a contract, well, not now, but then the definition expanded to, hey, it's actually this token contract, and it's a voting contract, and it's a multi-sig, and it's all these different contracts. Now it's expanded to all those contracts and some off-chain services, right? Some trust minimized off-chain services in the form of Oracle networks. And now there are smart contracts that use many different pieces of on-chain code, some Oracle networks, and a decentralized storage solution. And I think what's going to continue happening is that the amount of services, the amount of on-chain services, off-chain services, decentralized storage solution services that are cryptographically guaranteed and can be combined into more and more advanced configurations and more advanced use cases is going to grow rapidly. And so this is what's going to generate all those permutations of different use cases, because it's actually a very logical model, right? If you look at Web 2.0, Web 2.0 isn't just some core code somebody wrote and that's it, right? Web 2.0 web applications that function at a high level of value for users and at scale and speed and security, they're composed of hundreds of services, right? There's a ton of internal services that were written. There's a ton of external services from different places, right? So what a hybrid smart contract is a smart contract that isn't just about, hey, there's this piece of on-chain code, or there's these 2 pieces of on-chain code. It's, hey, there's these 5 pieces of on-chain code over here. There's 20 other pieces of on-chain code and 20 other chains to take people's money and give them back yield. There's 5 Oracle networks, all performing different functions, 2 giving data, 1 generating cross-chain interactions, 1 generating keeper events, 1 generating some kind of anti-fraud mechanism. And by the way, everything that's going on is being persistently stored in a decentralized storage mechanism, like Filecoin. And this is what a hybrid smart contract is. And logically speaking, right, and it's not even logically speaking, this is what DeFi is, right? DeFi is a hybrid smart contract, which is partly why DeFi uses so many oracles, because without oracles, DeFi can't exist. So all of the more advanced use cases are going to be hybrid smart contracts. And the interesting thing is that those failures, like the Robinhood failure, basically brought in a crop of people that weren't necessarily interested in tokenization. They were interested in using a hybrid smart contract that's called DeFi. And so in my experience in this industry, that's really the first time that I've seen people come into our industry in mass, not for the purposes of, hey, I want to get a token, buy a token, hold a token, sell a token, whatever a token, but I want to interface with a different way of doing things in a trust minimized manner. Yep. And I think that's a very, very significant difference from previous spikes in demand and usage of the technology in this industry.
Yeah, extremely well put. And speaking of use cases, part of what is going to help build out the Truth Machine and it's going to leverage the hybrid smart contracts and all these APIs that people are building over time is developers out there. So we have both the Chainlink community and the Filecoin community have many thousands of developers, probably tens of thousands of developers together. Those developers experimenting with the tools and the tech and so on, coming up with new use cases, coming up with new applications and experimenting is what ends up building the new kinds of applications that are going to flesh out and improve the world and make the Truth Machine have an impact. Something that we've been spending a bunch of time doing in the last year is sort of fleshing out this builders funnel to help builders out there try out and experiment with different kinds of technology and different kinds of architectures and so on, and provide some time and space for them to hack together, and then from then go on to graduate into accelerator programs, and from there go on into raising funding through venture capital and grants and so on. And one of the coolest things that's happened is these Chainlink Spring Hackathon earlier in the year had like this record-breaking developer turnout with around 4,000 signups, 140 project submissions, participants from 170 countries. It was a huge success. And one of the really cool things that happened out of that was many of those of the participants in that hackathon went on to develop their hacks into applications and businesses, and went into one of the several accelerator programs. And I think 9 of them, at least I know of at least 9 participants in the Chainlink Spring Hackathon that went on to the Tachyon cohort accelerator. So cool ones that I'll mention include these 9 are like WeatherXM, which is a weather station Oracle network, Fractio, Tamago, Bodo, Skill Wallet, Nifty Royale, Xerox Essentials, Blockbet, and Chester. So I'm mentioning these because they're they're example builders and example applications that came out of that hackathon, and they are now off to the races building one of these applications, helping improve tech and improve use cases and whatnot. And tomorrow, I know that your fall hackathon is starting, and that now went from I think 100K in prices in the last one, now to 500K in prices. So tell us about the hackathon tomorrow.
Yeah, sure, of course. It's at over 500,000 in prizes now. I don't even think it's just the prizes. I think it's the fact that there's a lot of mentorship. There's people from Google. There's people from a lot of different large and small organizations that can help both very early developers and later stage developers. And you're absolutely right that I've been really impressed at the amount of hackathon projects that actually continue to live and continue to exist as not only participants in various incubators, but end up actually raising substantial multi-million-dollar rounds. So we've had multiple people raise multi-million-dollar rounds from the previous hackathon, and this hackathon seems to be substantially larger, like anywhere from 50 to 100% larger in terms of the prizes and the size of the amount of developers. In any case, I think that our approach to all of this is that the developer community is really going to take the infrastructure that you and I have worked on for many years and turn it into something useful. And so our goal should be on enabling that group as much as possible through a number of resources, technical resources, services, decentralized storage, mentorship, educational courses, a path to raise money for their for their project. And I think the fact that that's actually happening is quite impressive, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the developers that actually use all of this infrastructure that's being built by our community and your community, and even the combination of that infrastructure. It's going to be those developers that create the use cases that bring the value of all of this to the average person in developed, emerging, and various markets. So, I really appreciate the way the Filecoin community approaches supporting developers, and we have a very strong focus on that as well. So if you're very early in your career in terms of learning smart contracts or learning how to build decentralized applications, you should attend the hackathon and get going, because there are people that started that way and now have actual projects that got funded. And if you're far along, then there's a lot of cutting edge presentations from top protocol teams and various other kind of benefits to doing the experience track. So I encourage everybody to go check it out, and it's going to be I think it's going to be pretty cool what comes out of this one.
Yeah, it's a huge success so far in all of the builders in the last hackathon. I can't wait to see what people are going to build in this one. It's super exciting to see all the participation, and I think this will just continue to compound well into next year and the year after that, and so on. And I think we can really build up a really great application, kind of like reactor, where people can come together, experiment with the tooling, get mentorship, try things out, build something, and if that thing has legs and it can be successful, then go on to accelerator programs and raise funding and so on. So yeah, definitely participate. Reach out to us if we can be helpful, and so on. Are there any applications that you would love to see built in the hackathon? Any ideas that you would throw out there?
Yeah, so I think there's two categories that are still underutilized but have a lot of potential. One is something called Chainlink keepers, where you can actually do certain amounts of off-chain compute in Oracle networks called keeper networks. And that actually greatly expands the scope of what you can efficiently build in the form of a smart contract, or a hybrid smart contract, as I defined it earlier. And the other one is the individual data providers that sign data right now and provide it from themselves as a data provider. As I said today, and the Associated Press announced that they're launching their own official Chainlink node, and so you'll be able to get election results, GDP, inflation indicators, any number of pieces of data. And so there isn't just market data, and there isn't just randomness. That's kind of the spike in the long tail. But then there's the long tail of all the things that you could build using various specific individual data sources. We have data sources about real estate prices. We have data sources that can be combined into an inflation index. And I think it's the combination of these unique data sources, as well as off-chain compute capabilities that aren't traditionally found on a blockchain. Those two combinations, possibly mixed with market data, mixed with the DeFi aspect, those are the permutations where I think a lot of unique and previously unseen things will come out of. And I think that there's a lot of different trust issues that can be solved through those permutations. So I would actually look at the newer functionality and the newer data sets, and I would think about, hey, nobody has ever had this data set on a blockchain, or nobody has ever had this ability to generate this type of trust minimized off-chain compute into a hybrid smart contract. How can I use this new capability to generate something new and novel? And I think that'll be impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a really amazing time, amazing hackathon. Can't wait to see what people make. Sergey, extremely well put. Thank you so much for coming to participate in Filecoin Orbit. Thank you for all of what you and the entire team, the set of teams building Chainlink and all of the infrastructure and all of the Oracle networks are doing. Is like a really critical part of the future of Web3 and making the truth machine reality and helping it be impactful in the world. So a huge pleasure as always. Great to chat with you. It's been great to get work together for many years now, and looking forward to many more.
It's my pleasure as always. Thank you for having me.